So, very good evening, everyone, and we are thrilled to welcome you to this session, and we hope it adds significant values to your career. We have some fantastic insights to share, and there will be an engaging Q&A at the end. So, have your questions ready, and we'll do our best to address them all during the Q&A. So, I'll be your host for the session, and we are honored to have Kim with us. Kim is currently the Senior Manager, Talent Attraction at Zapier. Kim holds a decade plus of experience in talent acquisition and employer branding. So, welcome to the session, Kim.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So, before we start with the agenda, this is the first session of our Remote Revolution Season 2. So, for the people who have missed our Season 1, you can have a look. We'll share the link just after this session. And so I will just like to introduce you guys to our series. So at Uplers, our mission is to streamline the hiring process, making it reliable, simple, and fast. And therefore, Remote Revolution is an initiative where we invite speakers from top-notch companies like Twilio, GitLab, Atlassian, BrowserStack, and many more to share their insights on how these remote companies hire, their process, culture, values, interview tips, and remote readiness traits required by global brands. Our mission behind this initiative is to upskill you guys to get a job in remote brand. Trust me, season one was amazing. So let's step into the first session of this season together. So moving forward to the session agenda, today Kim will be talking about her journey. She'll share some insights into her role. She'll talk about the unique culture and values at Zapier and her experience working with a remote team. Following that, we'll explore the intricate hiring process at Zapier. And next on the agenda, we'll address the critical questions asked by you guys, and we'll try to pick it all. So let's start with the session. Welcome, Kim. Without further ado, let's deep dive into the session. And to start with, tell us something about your career journey, your role at Zapier.
Thank you so much, Divya. Happy to share and glad to be here and nice to meet everyone and see so many of you in the chat. I will also say I love seeing that so many of you have the chance to work remotely or hybrid. It sounds like you have a lot of great flexibility, and I just love seeing that. So I had to call that out. A little bit about me. I have been in talent for a little over 10 years. Been in talent attraction, talent acquisition, also spending some time in employer brand. Through my journey, I have landed at Zapier. May will be about 2 years at Zapier. And there right here, I lead our talent attraction. So I have a really amazing team that is bringing in talent from all over the world. And I also focus on our talent brand efforts. And a lot of that is telling our story, creating new content, and really helping our teammates share their voices very broadly. So it's work that I love doing and I'm really passionate about. I also love within the work I do, but also outside of that, is just doing as much as I can to support others, especially those from underrepresented backgrounds, and women as well. I think throughout my career journey, I've faced a number of challenges myself as a woman in the workplace. And so I just find it really rewarding to be able to connect with women and people from all different backgrounds and help supporting them, offering advice, especially in today's market. Everyone's going through so much today. So trying to make those connections and help others and connect them with new opportunities are things I'm really passionate about. I'm connected with Elpha and PowerToFly. And if you're not a part of those organizations and you're open to it, I would say check those out too. And then just on a personal note, I live in Bellingham, Washington, so I'm about 2 hours north of Seattle. And my partner and I have lived here for several years now. And just I love nature, being outdoors, hiking, anything that has to do with being on the water in the mountains and spending time with my dog. As you can see in the photo, it's my little baby Tegan. But yeah, that's a little bit about me. Thanks for asking.
Great. So awesome. Thank you for sharing your impressive background and current role, as well as your passion for talent acquisition and employer branding. So, your holistic approach to life and work is undoubtedly reflected in your ability to create a positive and engaging environment for those around you. So, yeah, moving on to the next slide. This slide says about Zapier. So, when applying for a role at an organization, the first thing we search for is the information about the company. what it does, when it started, etc. Researching the company before an interview is a strategic move that not only benefits the employer, but also empowers you as a candidate. It allows you to make informed decision about the company, the position, while positioning yourself as a well-prepared and thoughtful candidate. So let's hear about Zapier from Kim.
Sure, thanks. So Zapier is a company that is, of course, on a mission to make automation work for everyone. We empower businesses to automate their workflows and move data across over 6,000 apps. This could be Google Sheets into Slack. This could be using Salesforce to capture leads and automate all of the workflows on the back end for you. And that way you don't have to do all of like the tedious tasks or the administrative tasks, and you get a lot of time back. We don't automate everything at Zapier, but we are on a mission to make it easier for any business, regardless of where they are, their size, anything at all. Like we really just want to be able to help other businesses in streamlining their work so that you can focus a lot more on the creative aspects of your work, on the human aspects of your work, strategizing, finding solutions to problems, building relationships with your peers. When you have a lot more of that time back, you can focus on those important aspects of your work. So that's really what we do. We, of course, as you can see on the slide, we have over 2 million businesses that automate with us. And I will share a fun fact that I think is really neat about Zapier that I have not experienced at any other company. And I know a lot of companies say we're customer obsessed, but we actually have customer connection goals. Every single person is Zapier. And even within our talent acquisition or talent attraction work, we make it a point to connect with our customers at least once a quarter. And we'll listen back on some of their phone calls that they have with our internal teams. And we get to hear about their pain points. We hear, what do they like about our products? What do they not like? Are they having trouble scaling within their organization? And what's also neat is that we will have customers come to our company hangouts. They will tell us about our new products, our new features. They'll let us know what they think. And then we're able to iterate and build our products that way. We recently launched some new products and some new features, tables and interfaces. And what's cool is we don't focus on it being perfect. We get it to a great point, and then we're able to share it with some of our customers and say, tell us what you think. Do you like it? Do you not like it? Do you have any advice for us? And then we can continue to build upon that. So I just think that's really neat because you don't always get that at your company. So I would recommend that to any company. And then I guess sharing a little bit more, kind of going off that, who we are. Of course, I have here, we're humans who think computers should do more work. We don't think humans should do all of our work, but of course we think that we should automate what we can just to make our lives easier and get more time back. I've heard from so many of being able to use automation, being able to use AI tools to spend more time with their family in the evenings. Like those are the things that we want to be able to give back. I will say too, and you can see here, like being remote and spread across 38 plus countries, we do have to be really intentional about our culture and about how we come together as a team. And myself personally, I started out working in person in an office and spent most of my time there. And I always thought I could never be remote. And then fast forward to the pandemic, and I'm sure many of you experienced this, all of a sudden companies had to figure out, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do remote well? And I went through those pain points myself, and even as a leader, trying to figure out, how do I keep the team connected and feeling engaged and motivated in this new environment? But I will say what's neat about Zapier is that Zapier's always been remote since day one. So over 12 years, our founders started the company and just knew that this was the right model, and then just started hiring those individuals that they knew would thrive in a remote environment. So I think it's neat that like we have done it really well, but you have to keep that consistent. And some of the things we do, we have weekly company hangout. We also, as I shared, like we build connections to our customers, and not only do we listen to our customers, we meet with them in person. I'm really excited because next week I'm heading to Seattle to host a customer meetup to meet with our customers and meet with some of my peers and answer their questions and just get to know them a little bit more. We also have annual retreats, and our next retreat is coming up in 3 weeks in Denver, Colorado. And again, just a chance for us to like really connect and get to know each other. I will also say, I think something that makes us unique in being fully remote too is that we are building a global community. So we have folks from all over the world, all different backgrounds, gender, race, ethnicity, you name it. different ideas coming from different places and bringing that all together. And I think having those differences, that can really help us thrive. It can help create new ideas, and it can help push the limits on what we're able to do. There's a lot of work that is done there, I'm sure, as many of you know, especially in we call it the DIBBY space, diversity, inclusion, equity, and belonging. But I think the work is really important, and it's always evolving. And I would just say, if you're interested in learning a little bit more about the work we do around diversity and inclusion, there's a link there about how we're building a global community. We have a change log. Every year we share, here's what we're working on. Here's what we still know that we need to do. We're not perfect. And I really appreciate that. And then the last thing I would say too is like to really support that kind of environment and making sure that those who join do feel respected and valued and heard, is that we have a code of conduct, and everyone has to agree to that. And that includes things like being kind, being respectful, being responsible. But you could go out there and look at our code of conduct too. But I hope that helps in telling just a little bit more about our story and who we are. This slide, I think is a really important one to look at, because it goes a level deeper than just our company values. It talks a little bit more about the attributes that the ideal folks will have in terms of like who will thrive at Zapier. And there's a number of things you can see on the slide here, such as communicating openly, embracing innovation and continuous improvement, driving action, defaulting to action, driving results. Oh, sorry, I received a message that came up on my screen. Hopefully that's okay. And so there's a number of things I think you can see here that really means a lot to us. And we try to be really clear about here's who we are and here's who we're not. But I would have to say, if I had to choose just from one of these, because I don't want to spend too much time diving into everything that you can see on this slide here. But if I had to talk about one, I would probably talk a little bit about this first one that you can see, which is about communicating openly and being transparent. That's something that for me, I've had to learn a little bit more about since joining Zapier and really lean into. I'll say, honestly, just being vulnerable, I didn't always want to share my work transparently. I always felt like, why share something, maybe a project I'm working on or a document I have, until it's perfect? I want to make sure that it's received well. And I found being at Zapier that could actually hold you back in a number of ways. I've learned the value of communicating openly and sharing your work openly and often, to not only make sure that you're aligned on the vision, the direction, the measurables, whether it's your manager or your peers, but also soliciting input from other folks. There's a lot of times where now I share things transparently, whether it's in Slack or in a number of different methods with my peers, and they'll weigh in on it, and they'll provide me with some really great ideas. Sometimes they'll say, hey, this is a great start. I love what you've outlined here. Have you thought about doing this thing? And oftentimes I'll think, I'd never thought about that before. And so I think, honestly, it's just a great way to gather more ideas and to work a little bit more openly, and to not worry, to not fear, what if it's not perfect? What is someone going to think about this? The tip that I would have there, though, is when you have a document or a project or something that you're not quite ready to share, but you feel like maybe you should get some early input, at the top of it, just put work in progress. Just make a note that you're still working on it. And that way it's a little bit more open, maybe a little bit less like daunting when you're sharing that with your peers or with your manager, and they know that you're still in the progress of working on it. But I think operating transparently, sharing your work open and early, it can feel uncomfortable. And some may say, oh, I don't know if I like that. Maybe Zapier is not for me. But I think if that's something that either you're open to or you could get used to, I think that's just a really great attribute for someone to have when working at our kind of company, when we work so iteratively.
Yes. So yeah, if I'm audible properly, want to double check. Okay.
I'm sorry, can you
So
repeat that?
yeah, I was just checking I'm audible properly right now. Okay. So, yes, amazing. These cultural elements paint a picture of a dynamic and inclusive workplace that values collaborations, innovation, and a customer-centric mindset. This set of values not only guides individual behavior but also contributes to the overall success and positive atmosphere. So let's move to the next slide, which talks about Zapier's core values. So the fact that Zapier operates as a fully distributed team with 800 plus people across countries, all working towards a common mission with a shared vision. What are the values that bind them all towards a shared purpose?
Sure. So you can see the values that we have here on the screen. Default to action, default to transparency, growth through feedback, empathy over ego, and build a robot. These are all really, really important for us as an organization. And we actually don't just have them listed here or listed on our job page. We actually build these into everything we do, all of the work we do, our performance evaluations, because it's really core to how we operate. If I had to pick one of them here, again, I don't want to go into too much detail on every single one. I would probably talk a little bit about building the robot. I think this is really important at Zapier because there's always really tough problems that we're trying to solve. And we're looking for folks who are open to helping us solve them, to taking risks, to trying new things, sharing your ideas and your solutions openly. And I think we try to make it a space where folks feel comfortable doing that, where it's not like you have an idea and then it's shot down. But we have channels. We have Slack channels dedicated to sharing new ideas, channels dedicated to how can we make it easier to get things done at work. We also do hack weeks, and many of our teammates are using that time to try to solve some of the toughest problems that we have, maybe feedback from customers on why something isn't working. And so we're able to use their ideas and implement that and just make our product even better as a result. So I just think when it comes to our values, like the type of folks that will really thrive at Zapier are those who look at change as a positive thing. They look at challenges as an opportunity. They're flexible, adaptable, and just willing to dive in and try something that you've never tried.
Yes, amazing, amazing. So, these core values collectively depict a workplace culture that values action, transparency, continuous improvement, empathy, and innovation. It's truly inspiring to see such a comprehensive commitment to a positive and inclusive work environment. Moving on to the next slide, we have the interview process at Zapier. So this slide is really important for the people who are willing to apply at Zapier. So Zapier is an all remote company, and I'm sure you are like flooded with the applications from across the world. So could you shed some light on the hiring process at Zapier, like what all are the process and how should one prepare for that interview at Zapier?
Sure, yeah, I'd love to share. I will say I feel very lucky to work with a team that is very forward thinking and they challenge the status quo. And throughout this entire slide and all the steps in the process you see here, we don't do everything because every other company is doing it that way. We really try to think about how can we provide the best experience for a candidate and how can we make it as easy as possible. Don't always get it perfect by any means, but I think there's a number of things that Zapier does really well. And from the first part, from the first step here of applying, when you apply to a role, you don't even have to have a resume. If you have a resume, great, but you don't need one. You could attach your LinkedIn profile or just simply fill out some questions and tell us a little bit about yourself. You know, we want to hear more about where you've been, what you can do, what your skills are, and how that would relate to the role. And so I think that makes the process just so much easier. I remember going through that myself and I thought, wow, this is amazing that a company is not requiring me to upload my resume and then it doesn't parse the information. I have to type it all in manually. It just becomes so frustrating. So that's the first part of our process. And we are committed. We have a commitment to applicants, and this is available on our jobs page. You're welcome to take a look at it because it covers a lot of the details that you see here on this slide. But we have a commitment to applicants where we get back, or at least we aim to get back to all applicants within 7 days. So our commitment is that we provide an update. And sometimes that update is we're still reviewing resumes or we're still reviewing applications. But sometimes it's, hey, this isn't going to be the right fit right now, but let's stay in touch with you. And we do our best to provide those who apply with some other options. We'll even send some links to other companies that are currently hiring that are remote too, so that we can continue to help those who come to Zapier. But if you are qualified for the role, then of course you'll move forward to an interview with a recruiter and spend maybe 30 to 45 minutes talking to the recruiter generally about your skills. You'll also talk about compensation. You'll have an open and honest conversation about salary, benefit, any questions that you might have there. We also share that information on our job description so that you have all of that information before you even apply. But we know there's a broad range there. The recruiter will take their time and discuss all of those details with you right then and there. You don't even have to ask about it. If you are qualified to move forward, then of course, as you can see here, you'll meet with the hiring manager. Some of these steps are also like pretty similar, I think, in most companies, from meeting with the hiring manager, maybe doing a skills assessment or a take-home assignment, and then moving to a final interview. But I will say, like, we do our best to, or we try to do our best to provide the opportunity for candidates to ask us a lot of questions throughout the process too, because I think it goes both ways. It's 50-50. It's not just about us getting to know you, it's about you getting to know us, and will this be the right opportunity for you? I do hear a lot I see a lot on LinkedIn about like maybe take-home assignments. They don't serve a purpose, or they're not really helpful, or they take up too much time. And I have seen that before at some companies, where it seems like it's just so daunting and there's so much information you have to provide, and it becomes a bit much. But here at Zapier, we try to be intentional about what those really include, and so that it doesn't take you too much time, but it's enough that you can come to the table and share a little bit more about how you think, how you strategize, how you communicate. I did this during my interview at Zapier, and it was very simple. And they said, just tell us about something that you're passionate about. Tell us about a challenge you've worked on before and how you would solve it. They didn't ask me to solve a problem for them, as some companies do. But I thought it was a really great opportunity for me to not only take an hour to put my thoughts down on paper, but then meet with my peers. And they got to see, how do I strategize? How do I communicate? But I also got to see, how do they communicate? How are they taking in what I'm sharing with them? Are they open-minded? Do they have the same values as me? And so I personally found a lot of benefit in it, but I think the company has to do it the right way. And then of course you can see, background reference checks, pretty standard. When we do make a final decision, we do that against our company rubrics. So we make sure that there is fairness throughout the entire process, especially when it comes to the right role, the right level, the right pay. And then of course you can see an offer. And hopefully once you get to that point, you'll accept and join the company. And I would just say the only other thing you don't see on the slide is our onboarding process. And I personally think our onboarding process is pretty amazing. It really continues for like beyond the first year at the company. You actually spend your first 2 weeks just learning about Zapier, just learning about how do I communicate in an asynchronous environment? How do I get feedback asynchronously? What are all the tools that Zapier has? How do I use them? Where do I go to find information? And then after those 2 weeks, you spend a lot of time in your own department and learn more from your own team. But we have our onboarding team that continues to reach out at 30 days, 60 days, 90 days beyond to solicit feedback and to make sure that you have what you need to feel successful in your role, because it goes beyond just the first couple of weeks. So I personally think it's a really neat process. Again, it's not always perfect. We always welcome feedback on things that we don't get right. And we always continue to solicit that feedback and to change our processes too based on that. But I hope that's helpful.
Yes, amazing, like wonderful insights. So thank you so much, Kim. We appreciate your inputs on the hiring process. Your thorough explanation has offered valuable insights into both expectation and the alignment of the company values with the selection criteria. So, any tips or resources for our audience on how they can prepare for a job at a global company like Zapier?
Yes, I have a lot of things I could share, but I don't want to take up all of the time. There are some links here so that you can see. There's a blog that Zapier shared, and this is several years ago, but I'm sharing it because I think that it's still really relevant today. But there's a couple things that I would love to share with you all that I hope that you will find helpful. The first is understanding what our employer is looking for in a remote worker. And I know many of you are currently working remotely, so you might already be familiar with a lot of these things. But I would say if I could give 3 pieces of advice, one would be that you're tech savvy. And very simple thing that you can do is just make sure that your technology is set up and ready to go before an interview. I mean, I think that's just a very simple tip, but it can go a very, very long way with an employer. I would also say on your resume, list out some of the tools that you're using in an asynchronous environment, or that maybe you're familiar with that would help you in an asynchronous environment. And during the conversation that you have during the interview, reference some of those tools. Maybe you're used to using Slack, maybe you send voice memos, you like to share videos. There's a number of things that I think you can do during the interview to even illustrate that you have those abilities. And maybe you haven't had the chance to work in a remote environment before, but perhaps you have a lot of friends or colleagues who you've communicated with across the country. How do you stay in touch with those individuals? So you can use the experiences you have too to say, I know I haven't worked in a remote role before, but I've gained the experience in X, Y, Z ways, and here's how I would do that at this company too. And the second thing I would say is that you're an effective and efficient communicator. There's a couple of things you could do there. One that I would always recommend is when you're preparing for your interview and you're thinking about the examples you want to share, run it through your head. And I would say do that at least twice, maybe more if that's helpful for you. You could even do some role plays with a friend. But I always say run it through your head twice, once at like normal speed and time yourself, and then once a little bit faster, a little bit more succinct, maybe not as much information, because you might have an interviewee, or you might have an interviewer ask you as the interviewee, hey, I have one more question, can you answer it in 2 minutes? And so if you've already run that through your head of how you can cover that material really fast, you'll be ready to go and you'll feel really prepared. And I would also say when you're doing such as maybe a take-home assignment, try running it through ChatGPT if you have access to ChatGPT and just seeing if it could condense it for you, maybe put some things in bullet points. I think working remotely, you have to be really cautious of how you're communicating and making it as simple and easy as possible. That is something I have personally had to learn, and ChatGPT has really been my friend in helping me consolidate what I'm writing so that it comes through in a really, really clear manner. So that could even help you when filling out your application too. The third thing I would say is just that you know that you're a great fit for the company and their values. I would say review the company's job page, review their values, look at how they're writing their job descriptions. What is the tone, and does that align with your values? And I think that you could share how this has shown up for you during the interview, which illustrates your interest. And you could say something like, I noticed like at Zapier that you all value empathy over ego, and share an example of a time where you showed empathy. Maybe you had a colleague that was struggling and you are able to speak to a time that you leaned in to support that person and help them in overcoming that problem, and reach that end result just by being a really empathetic person. So those are some examples there. Where to find remote jobs? I know that there's a lot of talk about job postings not being legitimate or whatnot, but I would say always just rely back on the company's jobs page. Granted, not all jobs will always be posted on the jobs page, especially more like senior leadership, executive level roles. They may not always be posted externally, but I would say you can always double check the jobs page. There's a number of job boards that you can go to as well, which the blog covers a lot in that. But one that I would suggest that I hear a lot of great feedback on is Otta. The Otta app is free, and you can search for jobs based on your skills, your location, compensation requirements, and it will send you generated lists as often as you like that really match with your skills. Yeah, I think those are the main. Actually, there's one more tip that I would have, and that is to check out companies that promote organizations based on their values. One of those that I'm connected with or have worked with in the past is called Key Values. And Key Values is more for engineers, but you can still go in and see what are these companies valuing? Do they value remote work? Do they value parents in the workplace? And there's a number of things that you can connect with there, and that might introduce you to a new company that you might want to follow, maybe find a job at in the future. And then just very quickly, how to apply and how to interview for a remote job. Again, I think it's all about when you apply, just be very clear, be very concise in your communication. Make sure that you're prepared prior to the interview, try to limit distractions. I say this because when you're working in a remote role, you have to try to eliminate those distractions. But I also think like life happens. You might have a child walk into the room. I have a dog that will bark. And I think in those moments, it's just about showing that like, hey, it's live, and just being professional in that moment, just asking the interviewer, I'm sorry, can I just take one moment away? And then mute yourself, take your video away, and then do whatever you need to do. Grab your barking dog, and then come back to the interview and just thank you for your patience. Thank you for giving me that time. And let's dive right back into the interview. So try not to get too flustered, I would say, when things happen like that, because things happen like that for me almost every single day. And I guess the only other last thing I would say when you think about being in a remote environment and you're preparing for an interview is, and even during that interview, is to ask questions that will help you decide, is this remote environment right for me? Like, how will my manager help me in a remote environment? I'm not going to see them every day. So even asking the manager, if I'm working through a challenge, how are you going to support me? Just getting to know your manager, your potential future manager, a little bit more within a remote environment, I think is really important too.
Yeah, that's so true and great. Amazing information you have shared, and I'm sure everyone will be eager to apply these tips while looking for a job at any remote company. So, as we move forward at any till now you have talked about how to get a remote job, how we can prepare ourselves to get a remote job. But once we get a remote job, like it's very important for us to be that productive and efficient, because as efficiency is always a strength most counted upon and can be enhanced with communications, utilizing skills properly, and task management. So would love to hear more about on how we can enhance our productivity.
Sure, yeah, happy to share some of these tips. These have all helped me a ton in just doing more with not always having all the resources that you want to have. One, I would encourage, of course, this is more for recruiters, but I would say lean on your hiring managers. Your hiring managers could help you promote the job on social media. Maybe they could do some live sourcing with you. Maybe it's their commitment to getting back to you on candidates within a specific period of time. I would just say as much as you can, lean on your hiring managers, ask them, tell them what you need. I think it's about a partnership, and it's not so much here's what I do, here's what you do. Like let's tackle them together. And one of the things that we do really well at Zapier is we communicate in public Slack channels, and we actually have a hiring team channel for every open role we have. So every time we open a job, we also open a hiring team channel in Slack. We name it with the same name of the job, and you'll have the recruiter, the sourcer, the coordinator, hiring manager, all the interviewers all in that channel together. And they can all collaborate together, share updates as they're happening, ask questions, and everyone stays on the same page. So I think it's less of like chasing down information or trying to figure out from the recruiter, what did you hear? From the coordinator, what did you hear? Everything is being communicated right then and there in that channel. And I think that that's been really effective. And I would encourage any company to operate that way if possible. I would also say second is streamline your communication, and that can help you in getting some time back. I love using asynchronous communication tools, like Slack is my best friend. I also enjoy sending my team voice memos or even video recordings. I know not everyone always has access to those tools, but I think if you can, they can be really powerful, whether it's like preparing for a meeting, giving time back. For me, sharing a video eliminates tons of meetings. So I love being able to share some of those things. Of course, I've talked about ChatGPT a little bit. Personally, I also love Grammarly. Grammarly helps me with, of course, grammar and spelling, but it also helps me write in the tone of my own company. And it does save me time by giving me suggestions on ways to think about how I'm writing. And I use Text Expander. Text Expander saves me a lot of time as well, because I can just create small snippets and open up entire paragraphs to send to people, but I can still personalize them myself too. I personally save maybe 30 to 60 minutes a week using Text Expander, but I've seen some recruiters saving several hours a week using it. So that's just a tool that I always advocate for. And then there's some advice. There's a link there that we can always send out afterwards, and some examples from a Zapier blog about how to utilize automation to get time back. And then just the last thing I would say is a couple of methodologies: prioritize, align with your manager, make sure you're working on the right things at the right time, prioritizing your rec. Not everything is a high priority at all times. So if you're unsure, just ask. I would also say work in sprints where you can block your calendar and try to work in an hour, maybe 3 hours, maybe a whole day. I used to take a project and work on it 20 minutes here, 30 minutes there, 15 minutes here or there in between meetings, and you kind of get caught off track. So I would say if you can, just block enough time that you can really focus on something and just try to knock it out if that's possible for you at all. And I would also say lastly, if there's something that you're not familiar with, like, yeah, research, try to figure it out. but don't get stuck on it for so long that it's holding you back. If there's someone else in your organization or on your team that has the knowledge that can help you get it done that much faster, go to that person and ask for their help. This has helped me a ton. Like I'm not an expert when it comes to data, but I will often lean on our data team to say, am I looking at this right? Or could you help me break this down a little bit more? Because this is just not my wheelhouse. And so I think it's okay to be vulnerable and to say, this is not my expertise. My expertise is here, your expertise is there, and I need to rely on you. So I would always recommend that. And there are, as you can see on this slide, some additional examples from our own team. One that I used recently was our goal bot, and we just started using what we call MAP goals, which are measurable, ambitious, and prioritized. And so we needed to put them in the MAP format, and many of us had not done that before. So I wrote out my goals and I put it into the bot and said, write it for me in MAP format. And it brought it back to me. And it said, here are your MAP goals, and you could strengthen them further if you did this or if you did that. And that was just so helpful because I got so much time back that way. You can see some other examples here, some of the things that our recruiters are doing too. But yeah, I hope that this is really helpful. And if it's helpful to share like links or anything after this presentation, definitely happy to do so.
Yeah, great. Awesome. It's really amazing to know all these insights, and thank you so much for sharing it to the audience. With this, we are done with the slides, and now let's dive into some questions from our audience. And I would request everybody, whatever questions you have, you can type in the chat box and we'll try to pick it all. So yeah, we have received a question and we'll start with it. And it is, how does Zapier evaluate employees' performance? And does Zapier offer learning resources like Udemy or any other learning platform licenses for employees to upgrade themselves?
Yes, we do. So when it comes to evaluating performance, I think this is done in a number of different ways. We're always talking about performance, and it doesn't have to be a negative thing. But we talk about performance in regular one-on-ones. We used to do quarterly check-ins, but we now do check-ins or reviews twice a year. So that gives us the opportunity to reflect back on how each of us are doing and the impact that we're really making. That's been a big focus for Zapier, just even within the last year. It's like, what is the impact that you're making? You could list out in your performance review all the things you've done, but at the end of the day, like, what does that really mean for the organization? And so we're having deeper conversations with our leaders around that to make sure that the work we're doing really is making the right impact. But we have these conversations on a regular basis because I feel like it's a terrible thing if it comes as a surprise. If you haven't met an expectation, wouldn't you want to know that immediately so that your boss or your peers can help support you along the way and help you continue to grow and improve? And so I just think as much as you can, like, share feedback, let each other know what you're thinking, how you're doing on a regular basis. Don't just make it once or twice a year. That way you can take that and grow that much faster. And in terms of support, we have a ton of support. Some of the tools that you've mentioned here, we've got a number of different platforms. We have a learning budget that we can use as well. So if there's conferences we want to attend, if there's tools that we want to use, there's a number of things that we have at our fingertips so that we can continue to grow. Myself personally, I had the chance to work with a Better Up coach. I wanted to improve my skills as a leader. And so I spent 6 months working with a Better Up coach that was funded by the company. And that made a huge difference. I was able to go to her and let her know where I was struggling or where I needed some help. And she was really great about helping me with that. So I love that, like, we have all of that at our fingertips and you can kind of pick and choose what's best for you.
Great, thank you for answering that. So we have another question, which is, any specific advice or tips for people who aspire to join an all remote organization but have no prior experience working remotely?
Yeah, for sure. I always think back to transferable skills and experiences that you gained. I think that that's extremely valuable. Working remotely, I think there's a number of things. Like I said, communicating very distinctly and clearly, being able to show that you care about staying in touch and staying connected to other folks. I think time management is really important, being able to show that you can manage your time well and that you can work independently. I think in an interview, you might be able to share a time where you had to handle a tough situation, a challenge, a project, and maybe your manager wasn't there or you didn't have anyone else to go to. How did you figure it out on your own and how did you overcome it? Because often in a remote situation, you may not have immediate support readily available. And so I think just being able to showcase the experiences and the skills that you do have, whether it's maybe through school or if you've only worked in person, I think you've still gained a lot of those skills that can help you in a remote environment. You know, I moved from being in an office to being remote, and it took some time. You know, it didn't just come overnight, but I think there's a lot of skills that you can learn over time that can still help you in showcasing that during the interview. So I think as much as you can, just take some specific examples of what you've done and how you can tie that to the new remote environment while you're in that interview. Be proactive about it. Don't wait until they ask you. Tell them, I know I've not worked in a remote environment before, but these are some of the skills I have. These are some of the experiences I've gone through. And I think this is how it would relate to the job. And this is why I think it would still be a great fit for me.
True, true. Absolutely. So, yeah, next question is, what are some of the key qualities that you as a recruiter look for while hiring for roles at Zapier?
Yeah, that's another great question. Of course, we always look for the right skills. I mean, I think skills are important for any job and making sure that it is going to be the right fit for the company and the person. But I think values and culture are also really, really important. We look for folks who we know, and you've seen the slide here, but folks that will really thrive at Zapier. And so we look for folks that are empathetic, that are kind, that will support their peers. We look for folks that take an inclusive approach, that are there to learn from others and to celebrate others regardless of their background. We look for folks who don't shy away from hard work if a challenge comes your way. And I've been there, I've had situations I still do where I'm like, oh, how am I going to solve this? But I think taking it like one step at a time, being willing to break it down, being willing to figure it out. Those are all things that I think we look for in folks when we're thinking about who we want to hire.
Yes. So, yes, another question, which is with a multicultural remote team, how do you make sure that people stay connected?
Yeah, that's a great question. I know I shared some things on one of our slides through like our customer meetups and through our annual company retreats, but it does go a lot further than that too. We use an app called Donut, and we have what we call our donut chats. They're basically like paired chats between teammates, and you can opt into it. It's not something that anyone's required to do. But if you opt into it, it will pair you up with another person somewhere else in the company, somewhere else at Zapier. And I take part in these on a regular basis. And I've had the chance to meet so many of my teammates and just have casual conversation. It's not even really meant to be about discussing your work. You could, but it's usually just about getting to know that person, what's going on in their life. And I think what's really neat about that too is you get to meet all these different people across the company. And then you have your annual retreat and you get to, oh my gosh, that's you. Now I get to chat with you in person and get to know you a little bit more in person. And so that's definitely one of the ways that we stay connected. I think that's like a smaller team, and even within our recruiting work, we try to do a lot of things like happy hours or game sessions and just different ways of bringing people together and having fun, just getting to know each other.
Great. So, yeah, another question related to it only, that is, as a leader in a remote setting, how do you balance fostering team collaboration and ensuring productivity among team members? Any insights and strategies you can share for the leaders, basically?
Sure, I think driving results and keeping everyone motivated, that can be tough. I will say, I think something that we have been focusing on more at Zapier and myself as well is just setting really clear goals and really clear expectations of what you have of each person on that team. Making sure that that person understands what are their key priorities, what do you expect of them at the end of the day, what does it mean to be a strong performer? If you're really, really clear on what those goals are and how that person can make an impact, then I think they know what they need to do to be successful. And then beyond that, it's just having those open conversations to celebrate their work or to lean in and to say, hey, this was really great. I think it could have been even better if you tried XYZ. Constantly leaning in and giving someone that feedback to help them along the way so that they can do their work even better than they had before, I just think is really powerful.
Yes. So, again, a question which is as you guys are working remotely. So, any challenge you are facing working remotely as a company, basically? A person has this question.
Yes, I think there's always going to be challenges. I think just the number one that comes to me, and there's probably many that I could think of, but I think one of the main challenges is really just fostering those relationships. We do a lot to be intentional, but it can be hard sometimes when you're on your own and you're working from an office all day and you get to see people on Zoom, but you don't have the chance to go out and build relationships outside of that. I think back to the last time that I was working in an office and I was at Uber and had such an amazing time just being able to go out to dinner and happy hours with my team, my peers. And we just got to know each other so well and so intimately because we had all of that time. And we don't have that in a remote environment. And I think that's honestly probably one of the challenges. But I would also say something that can help with that is like, don't be afraid to just reach out to other folks in the company and just ask, hey, could we do a coffee chat? Or if you find someone who works in a city close to you, maybe offering to meet up with that person in that city. Something else that we do at Zapier is we do have local city channels. And so like we have a Seattle channel. So anytime I'm in Seattle, I can drop a note and say, hey, who else in Seattle is available? Do you want to meet up? Do you want to grab lunch? And so there are some ways to overcome it, but I still think that that's probably one of the toughest aspects, at least for me, being in a remote environment.
Okay, so we again have a question which is like currently we can't see any remote opportunities from India. So in near future, like will there be some opportunities available for APAC region?
Was the question around, will there be any open roles in India at Zapier? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, we don't have any right now, but I do hope that that will change in the future. We're always looking at where else we want to expand and where we want to hire from. Like that internationalization is a large part of what we do. And we look at new entities, so that could always be an option. And that's why I was also excited to meet with you all today, because I know we don't hire right now, but that could definitely change. My advice would be, if you're interested in Zapier, go to our jobs page and you'll see general interest forms. And so if you're in engineering, fill out a general interest form within engineering. If you're in recruiting, you could fill one out within the people team. And that way you're a part of our talent community. Because when we are able to hire in India, hopefully when new roles open, the first place we go is our talent community. We look for folks that have the skills that we're looking for. And of course, those who have also expressed interest. And then of course, being a part of our talent community, we'll invite you to recruiting events, and our events are aimed at like really supporting you. That might be resume review, how to negotiate an offer, a whole number of different things that like you might be challenged with. And we'll send newsletters so we can keep you informed of what's new at Zapier too. But I hope that changes.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think it was a question which was being asked from last 10 minutes. So thank you for asking like answering
Sure.
that. Okay, so let's go for the last question for the day. So as we are working remotely and you'll be the best person to ask this question to. What are the things which we can learn or unlearn while working remotely?
Hmm. Learn. I think I talked about this a little bit. I just think about my experience, but I think about communication. I just think it's so critical to be able to communicate effectively in a remote environment. I think sometimes when you're used to moving from being in an office to remote, that's hard because in an office you can just tap someone on their shoulder. You can just go talk to someone about something. And in a remote environment, if you're keeping that information to yourself, you're only talking to one other person about it, you're leaving so many other people out of that conversation. So I think just getting used to communicating openly, communicating in public channels, not being afraid to ask a question. You might feel like it's a stupid question, but if you're communicating openly, your question is answered and everyone else around you gets to learn about that too. But I think being clear, being succinct, I've had to focus on that a lot myself. Like, am I asking this question in a really clear way that the other person is going to understand it? Or was it confusing? And so that's something for me that I feel like is a big learning when working in a remote environment. Unlearn, I think I've done a better job of this in the last couple of years, but something I had to unlearn was not always being on. I had my laptop available to me at all times, and I would have my phone, I had my Slack and my email on my phone, and I put in a lot of hours. Every time I saw that notification on my phone, I felt like I have to answer this. And so I had to unlearn that habit. And so now I don't even have anything work related on my phone. And when I close my laptop, I've closed my laptop, and that's the end of my day. Now, if I do want to log on to take care of something, I'll be really intentional. It's like, okay, I'm going to take 20 minutes and I'm just going to do this thing, and then I'm logging off. But I had to be really intentional about that to support my own work-life balance. And no one was telling me, you need to be online late at night, or you need to work extra hours. I told myself that, and I had to unlearn that habit.
Yes, thank you so much, Kim, for answering all these questions. And with this, let's end this session. And we truly value the insights you shared with us. And thank you for dedicating your time to help our community grow. Your commitment has made a real difference by improving job opportunities in the tech community and creating more options for remote work. We truly appreciate your efforts.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you all having me. I appreciate everyone coming and joining the session. I know that there's, at least I think that there's still some questions in the chat, so you're always welcome to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Happy to connect, happy to answer any additional questions that maybe we didn't get to. But thank you so much. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, so for all our joiners, we have a few next steps. We'll be sharing all the details, including this PPT and the session recording with WhatsApp and other social media. So stay connected, and we are excited to organize more such sessions. So for future insightful sessions, make sure to register on Uplers. You will find many job roles posted over there from different companies on our website. You can explore that. And for the people who are not a part of our Discord community, can join it through the link shared by Shilpi in the chat. You can look and just join the community. You will get um, access to a lot of things, and you can post your queries and everything in that community. And we'll send a link to Kim to join our community, and I'm sure you can interact with her there too. So yes, keep an eye out for all the updates. You can also join our WhatsApp channel for the updates of future sessions. And thank you so much, everybody who has joined. We truly appreciate your presence. Thank you, everyone.